One and all present here, on behalf of the organizers, we warmly welcome you to the fourth session of our FDP, which is titled The Art and Craft of Scientific and Technical Writing, jointly organized by the School of Natural, Applied and Social Sciences, the Language Laboratory, and the Center of Linguistics of Maulana Abul Kalam Azad, University of Technology, in association with the Islamic University of Science and Technology, Jammu and Kashmir. Before we proceed to the session, I would just like to introduce our respected panelists before Professor Dr. Shanmugam, Ms. Bhattacharya, and the participants. We have Professor Dr. Shukhendu Samazdar as the chairman of our FDP session. We have Mr. Shushanto Koyal as joint coordinator of the session. We have Mr. Sujoy Mitro. I think Mr. Mitro has not joined yet. He is also the joint coordinator of the session. And we have Dr. Shankar Mondol as the convener. This session, which is titled Finish Your Dissertation Before Time, a Systematic Approach to Quality Thesis Writing, will be chaired by Professor Raja Shanmugam and Ms. Sayantani Bhattacharya. Professor Shanmugam is a professor in the Department of Chemical Sciences at the prestigious IISER, Kolkata. He did his postdoctoral research from the University of Massachusetts, and he is a recipient of various national awards like the coveted National Award for Technology Innovation. I'll just try to give you a brief intro to the best of my ability. As many of us are aware, a proper organization of ideas is vital for readers to decipher information properly. There are some formats or hallmarks that help the authors communicate the information in a concise manner with precision. Focusing on the relevance of research problems with the aid of empirical evidence is important to provide credibility to writers. The upcoming lecture by Professor Dr. Shanmugam will elucidate on this topic. So please.
Thank you so much for the very kind introduction. I must also thank respected Shukhendu sir for the great opportunity. And it's really a very wonderfully organized webinar. It's a lot of effort is being done, and I also appreciate the very thorough publicity and a lot of participation. And I am sure whatever the information we are going to share for next few minutes will be useful. Thank you so much. Let me share the screen. Is it visible? The screen
Yes,
is
visible.
I'm
Yes.
also audible, right?
Yes,
Am I audible?
you're audible. Yes, sir.
Okay. So with that, let me start giving a brief introduction on some thoughts on the what is the science. With that, I will move on to the actual topic. The chance discovery. That means that when we do the science, there are a lot of preparation in our mind is there, but there are the chance discovery through serendipity also happened in the history, and it will also happen in our day-to-day. We will be doing with one motivation, and suddenly our student comes, so this is what we see when we do the reaction. So that is called the serendipity result, and the history also evolved with the serendipity results. Particularly the very famous penicillin is a serendipity result. When the great Professor Alexander Fleming was doing his research in 1928, when he was examining the pile of petri dishes growing bacteria, he discovered that one particular dishes contained Staphylococcus culture, and that stopped the bacteria growth. He found that that was from the Penicillium family. That's why he named that one as a penicillin, which was non-toxic to human. That is a serendipity result. The second one, I am very proud to present this being a polymer chemist. The field evolved the polymer based on this serendipity result. The great Dr. Plunkett, who was working for a DuPont scientist, the great company, he was developing, he's working on this perfluoroethylene gas. So his ultimate aim is to make a new types of refrigerant gases, right? So one fine day he was examining all the cylinders, that particular defective cylinder of this gas that contained a slippery white powder that has unusual properties like chemically inert, which we all know, the Teflon tubes, right? The modern Teflon, that's what we came to know, which is chemically inert, high melting, and low surface friction. This led to the discovery of the Teflon. So that is also a serendipity result. And again, being a polymer chemist, I am very happy to share this information. So these two are there are several results on this serendipity research, and I just took these two as an example. Similarly, discovery through the sustained effort and perseverance. A researcher needs these two, a sustained effort and perseverance. That is always take the researchers to reach the goal. So there are so many examples. The first one is the discovery of aluminum by Hall. We all know that now the aluminum process will be, the process is much cheaper, but once it was very highly expensive metal. A teacher was teaching the value of the technology of aluminum. A class 9 student thought he will discover a process for making aluminum and make it less expensive. That perseverance and the sustained thought made it to reach that very effective route to make the aluminum. Similarly, we all know about Madame Curie's perseverance to discover radium, which later found applications in development for the X-rays as a diagnostic tool. And it is a 2 Nobel Prize winning effort, and also 5 in the family. This is the most famous discovery, I would say. So that is a great thing. Again, that also stand example for the sustained effort and perseverance research, right? So with these two nice examples, I will move on to the some thoughts on my own perspective. When you do a research, there are 2 types of research when you do. One is a basic science. That means you might have studied some fundamental reactions. Based on that, you go to the lab and start doing reactions and come up with a step A, will give you a step a product. Then you add reactant B and C, then end up in a product. And you study them thoroughly. Obviously, the obtained product is new. So that also will have a new property and new characterization. And in that way, you are adding a value to the science. This is a way of making a basic science, right? You are always making a new thing. To my knowledge, at least in the late 90s and even early 2000, even till 2010, this basic science were very much encouraged by all the bodies. For example, the funding agencies, even the publishing agencies, then all the award recognition national level bodies were supporting this basic science. But if you ask me the question, the scenario is not that easy for one researcher who is doing a basic science. I will come to that point in a minute after explaining what is a relevant science. A relevant science is a science with a clear objective that is relevant to the public, so or relevance to the application. So this is you can see the difference from the basic science. The relevant science needs a clear-cut goal to achieve the product. That product should see the light in the day-to-day applications, right? So that is called the relevant science. Now, everyone from funding agency to publisher to the recognition, wherever you go, whatever you do, they expect to do a relevant science, so that all the science should come to the market. That is the expectation. So these are the two broad way of doing research, and in my opinion, the overall scientific community is moving, or even being forced to do a relevant science, so that whatever the little effort we do in the lab should see the light. That is the motivation from all the peers and funding agencies. And this is what the example I would like to show between the thing. And as I mentioned in the previous slide, relevant research is objective driven. There should be a clear objective, and it also calls for a team effort. Yeah, basic science can be a single researchers we can do to the do as a single researcher, but the relevant science needs a team effort. For example, if I am working in a drug delivery research area, being a polymer chemist, I can make a molecule, but it needs a biologist to see whether this molecule is biologically compatible. Then it needs a clinician, whether the molecule can reach, it is compatible to the human development. It involves so many parameters, and that's where the relevant research is defined as it's a team effort. And also it requires a different knowledge domains. As I just mentioned, you need a chemistry, biology, even a theoretician, how these molecules can travel into the animal model or human systems, right? Exposing relevance in research needs to be necessarily an organizational behavior by the needs of time and social commitment connected. As I said, when you do a relevant research, there is a connectivity of the social commitment, right? So the product should reach the thing. So these are the importance of doing a relevant science. Whatever we do, whether it's a basic science or relevant science, ultimately we need to make the research as a document, right? So that comes the scientific documentation. That is called the scientific documentation. Whatever you do in the laboratory should be documented in various forms. And before we, from the independent researcher point of view, the first and foremost goal, if you are an academic researcher or if you are joining the lab, first thing, when you start a career as an independent researcher, the most important thing is writing a proposal. Even while applying for a job, you will be asked in which area you will be working, what is your field of work, what is your expertise so far, and which area are you going to work. This question will be placed in front of you when you start your career, right? So for that, you really need to have a clear idea of the area of choice, whether it is a chemistry, biology, physics. It doesn't matter in whatever the area you choose, you should have a clear problem which you are going to work. That needs to be nicely documented as a proposal, right? When you start the career, you need to give a proposal to the employer. The employer looks at your proposal. Okay, this expertise is not there in our laboratory or the academic institute or university or in the college, wherever it is possible. This expertise is really needed. So for that, you need to place your thoughts as a proposal, and that is called a proposal writing. After getting the job, you need to get the money for your to execute your idea, right? Then you need to submit proposal to the various government funding bodies and the private bodies wherever applicable. You need to place your idea in a nicely written proposal. That's why it is called proposal writing, the scientific presentation requires. Then you start doing a research and you are getting a good results. Obviously, when you start the new research, the results are new and you do not want to Of course, later you will make it available to others, but you really need to protect your idea, right? So when it is exciting and a new result, you want to protect the idea and make it for that purpose. You need to make it patent. That is called protecting your idea. That is called the patent writing. And you have to patent your idea. This can be parallelly done with writing a manuscript. Manuscript is you are disclosing your idea, the results to the scientific community by making a scientific document. And there are publishing bodies that we will see it in the next few slides. Through them, you are going to share your the knowledge, scientific knowledge that occurred in the laboratory in a nicely written scientific document. That is called manuscript. And after doing this, if you are, if the senior researcher is in collaboration with the younger researcher, and that younger researcher is doing a PhD or a master's, they need to submit a document that is called a thesis for getting their degree, right? That younger researcher also needs to get the degree and move on. So the senior researcher guides the younger researcher to get the degree, whether it is a master's or bachelor's or the graduate or PhD program. For that, the primary requirement is writing a thesis, making a scientific document in the form of a detailed report that is called thesis writing. These are the four, at least to my knowledge, these are the four important scientific documentation. One researcher should have it. And let us see one by one. When you write a proposal, you need to, as I mentioned, it is always necessary these days to choose a relevant problem, which is very striking and important. Even at least in my experience for the last 8 months, the government, the current relevant situation is COVID. Even my routine projects are not getting sanctioned because it's a drug delivery and sensor molecule. All the funding bodies is looking for COVID, the phrase, fancy name COVID. If that is there in your grant, it is easily getting accepted for funding, right? So that is why choosing the relevant problem, relevant to the society, relevant to the time, relevant to the condition, that is called the relevant problem, right? Choosing the right relevant theme is very, very, very important when you write a proposal. Then you should have a very clear objectives. The objective should be 1 to 3. You can make a 1 to 3 main objectives, and they should be very, very clear, sharp, and important objectives. In the proposal, you should include those. Then you should have information on the problem which you have chosen should be addressed at the national level and the international level. How this problem is standing at the national level and the international level. Who are all the researchers doing in this relevant problem? What are the current status? Then how this proposal is going to be different from the already existing who are researchers who are all working at the national level and the international level. That background you should clearly mention in your proposal. And you should be very careful and very thorough in that information, because maybe one of the researchers may be your peer reviewer for this proposal, right? So that you should be very careful while mentioning the national and international level, and you should be thorough in that information. Then in the same proposal, you should mention the timeline, how long it would take to finish the proposed relevant problem. That you should clearly, a flowchart, time-bound information you should give, month-wise or 6 month-wise, 3 month-wise. That timeline you should give a breakup, and by this time what you will do, and by this time what is expected to be finished, and like that a timeline should be given. Then most importantly, the budgeting things. What are the requirements to execute this budget? Because the reviewers and the funding bodies will very carefully look at the budget. Even there will be a question. The proposed budget is, I hope the proposed budget is optimum. It is not exaggerated. those questions will be asked while reviewing the proposal, right? So the budget should be very carefully calculated, and it should not ask for too many things which is not relevant to the proposed relevant problem. So budgeting also very careful, equally important, along with other points. Then when you discuss what are the project plans, you must discuss how the project will be executed, and each step there should be a checklist. If it happens, this is what the results are implying. There should be a checklist given in the proposal, so that the reviewer and the funding agency convenes that the PI, the principal investigator, knows about the problem, and he also understands the problem. He knows how to handle the problem. So those checklists needs to be thoroughly given. Then the proposal will definitely get a good comments, and most likely it gets funded. That's the thing. I'm going to have this tag, respect copyrights and check for plagiarism, in all next few 4-5 slides. And I will come back to that point in the, after finishing my introductory things to all the scientific writing, because this tag stands good for all the slides. So I am keeping it for the last. Then comes the patent writing. In fact, it is, we all may not have the expertise to write the patent writing, unlike the other scientific documents. Patent writing is something related to the law and other things. So mostly it is the lawyers who knows all the impacts and the effects on writing the patent, right? So there are several companies and agencies who write this patent, and there are every institute also used to have a patent cell that comprises the officers and employee who takes care of filing the scientific invention from the institute through that patent cell. So we may not know the technical part, how to write a patent. That we no need to worry also, because these are all special writing, special way of protecting the way of the scientific things. So we don't need to really worry about writing a patent, but there should be a patent cell, and through them we can, as I mentioned, there are professionals in these things, and we need to contact them through the patent cell and file the idea and protect your idea. That is very important. There are two types of patents, like national patents that covers the rights inside the nation. Then there are international patents. This stands, these rights are protected throughout the both country and international things, right? So we need to protect. If you need to protect your idea, you need to contact and you need to contact the patent professional, and you need to file the patent. That is making, and the patent writing is also another scientific writing. That's why I have kept here. The most important and very frequently we all do is a manuscript writing. After the successful making of the molecule, we all would like to make a scientific document which is called the manuscript. So when you start when you are ready, the senior corresponding author tells the junior author that now we can go for a manuscript. We have to, the first important thing, we have to choose the publishers. For example, American Chemical Society. There are several publishing bodies like American Chemical Society, Royal Society for Chemistry, and Wiley, elsewhere. There are several publishers like that. First, we have to decide from where we are going to send first, because each publishers have their own policies, own guidelines, and way of presenting the manuscript, right? So that's why we have to choose them first. This is my own idea. I always tell my students, so it varies to PI, but I believe that doing a good science is 50%, and presenting them to the audience with a clear way is another 50% to make it successful. A good manuscript tells based on, you can see you can decide whether the manuscript is good or bad by seeing the figure itself, the quality of the figure. That's why you have to first decide the figures, how many figures you are going to make it in the main manuscript, and how you are going to place it, and organize them accordingly. If you do that first, then your manuscript writing is almost done, because the rest of the thing you are going to describe the figures in a sequential manner, right? So make a good figure from your research work. First you collect the data, then make them a presentable, publishable, easy, very thorough figure. You decide the figure and make them, then organize them. Then the flow of the manuscript goes from figure 1 to 5. In that way, if you plan, then most of the work writing the manuscript is done. So make the good figure is very, very important. Then comes the abstract. Abstract is the one, of course, the handling editors, and even once it gets published, the readers also reads the abstract only. So the abstract writing is very, very important, and it should have a following 4 points, 4 to 5 points. The background of the problem that you should briefly tell. Then the problem actually, what is the problem is whether if you are making a research, if you are making a product for the cancer therapy, the problem is the cancer, right? So that you should clearly mention for which cancer you are going to make this product. That you should clearly tell. Then the approach, how you are approaching the problem with your technique, your techniques, that you can mention that. Then the findings. This part should be very clear, should not confuse, and we cannot roam around on this point. The findings should be very, very clear and within 2 sentences. That should be very vague to think. Then the implication, how the result is going to implicate. This how, to my knowledge, you can have the abstract and the brief. Then comes the introduction, which is going to set the stage for your results, right? So you should be very thorough in the literature, and you have to make the stage well toned for your results. So introduction is the one where you can nicely, based on the convincing introduction, you can actually make the reviewers and the readers to take in your side. So make the introduction in such a way that it conveys the results very nicely. Then comes, as I said, the resultant discussion is very clear. Once you make the figure, then you can flow according to that direction as you have made the figure. Then the conclusion, the conclusion also equally important to your abstract. And there you have to emphasize what is the finding. So make a very sharp and clear conclusion with you are giving importance to the findings. These are the important points while writing a manuscript. And this comes as an example for the referencing. Referencing is very, even some reviewers or editors get annoyed if you do not pay attention to the references, because references you are giving as the respect to the inventors who already worked in the area. So the naming should be very proper, and abbreviation, and there should not be any typos and misspelling or those things in the references. But the referencing, each publishers, as I mentioned in the previous slide, there are different publishing agencies, right? American Chemical Society, Royal Society, elsewhere, Wiley, all of them different referencing style. For example, what I am showing it, the first one is from the Royal RSC. Sorry. This is what the title says: the stimuli responsive nanocarrier for an effective delivery of multi-frontline tuberculosis drugs. Then comes the author. How this is written as a reference, you can see that there is abbreviation for your first name and the last name. Then it is organized in the way. Then the journal abbreviation, polymer chemist, polymer.chem. Then the year, volume, then the final page number. This is the way RSC prefers. Now come to the, here you don't see a title of the manuscript. But if you come to the ACS, the style becomes SR Mane become Mane SR. Then if you see the title of the manuscript is incorporated. Here the volume is bold, but here the year is bold, like that. So there are so many things. Even when you cite these reference 1, 2, 3 in the main manuscript, some publishers you can straight away quote 1, 2, 3. Some publisher you need to keep them 1, 2, 3 in a parenthesis, not a straightforward brackets. It's parenthesis, like that. So many small things needs to be carefully followed, because when you submit the manuscript, before it reaches the editor, the publishing assistant goes through all these small informations. It is indeed painful, because even after going through all these things, it is not guaranteed that your manuscript will be published, because it will be sent for review only after checking all this information. This part, I personally have a objection. Even I always, wherever possible, I request the publishers to please accept for a manuscript in any form for reviewing. Once the reviewers agree, then we can do the formatting as per the journal's requirement, right? That will be a fair agreement. But these publishers always insist, no, you should go through all the fundamental instructions, typo, without any typo, you have to be very careful. Then only editor will see. Then after that, it is not guaranteed that whether it will go for review or not, that is not in our hand. But still, we have to follow these things very carefully. And this referencing is very, very important. You should go through very carefully. And there are, in older days, these type of writing tools are not that common or not popular. Now, every institution has the licensing for all these writing tools. There are very nice videos and demonstration videos how to use these softwares that is available online. You can go through and use this. EndNote and Web of Science are the writing tools for referencing software. You can include, while giving the reference citing, you can use this software. There you can actually choose which publishers you are going to submit, RSC style, ACS style, that you can choose in EndNote and Web of Science. So now these things bit relatively easier compared to manually changing. Then for the figure making, you have ChemDraw for making the chemical structure that most of you know. There are other softwares. One particular thing is the CorelDRAW is very popular these days, making very nice 3D chemical structures and demonstration. Those are all possible using these writing tools. So I thought these softwares will be very useful for, if you already know, it is good. If you do not know, please go through, so that these are all very useful for writing the tools. And with that, I must finish my presentation, because Sayantani will go through the next most important scientific writing, which is thesis writing. I thought instead of me giving a lecture, a student who just finished, if she shares her experience, I thought that will be very useful. And this idea is not mine. I should acknowledge our respected Sukhendu sir, who gave this idea, and he suggested that if any young researcher who finished just now can share his or her experience. So there the idea came, and I requested Sayantani. I must thank Sayantani for her agreement. And before going to that, I must emphasize the last thing. When you write, when you do research, or when you make a scientific writing, you must stick to the scientific ethics, and you must also check the plagiarism. Remember, plagiarism is the one not copying someone else's research. If you are say, for example, if you publish a paper last year, and if you are taking the part or the chemical structure or the writing from that manuscript itself, even though it is your own research, but you do not have a right to do that, because you already published, you have given the copyright to someone else. So even though it is your wordings, your research, your own work, but when you are going to make use of those without citing the publisher, it is called a plagiarism. Even if you cite also, it is the software will not allow you to use the exact phrasing. You really need to change. You change the languages and give the citation. And now the scientific community is very sensitive for the plagiarisms, and we have to stick to the scientific ethics and plagiarism while doing the research as well as scientific writing. With that platform, I request Sayantani now to continue her presentation on thesis writing. Sayantani.
Am I audible?
Yes, Sayantani, you go ahead. Yeah.
Thank you, sir, for your kind introduction. So first of all, I would like to thank the organizers for arranging such a wonderful webinar to make the process of scientific writing a bit easier. And
thank you. Are you seeing the screen, Sayantani?
Yes, sir. So do I need to share it again?
No. You can go ahead. I can change it from my side. Yeah, you just go ahead. Yeah.
Oh, okay. So as we all know that scientific writing is it's an indispensable job, and no research is finished until it is written up. But this is not the primary focus of most of the students. So scientific writing comes as an afterthought for many. That's why what happens when it comes to writing, it becomes an overwhelming job for most of the students. That's why, so if we know the basic aspects of scientific writing beforehand, then the process becomes a little bit less challenging. And there are few type of scientific writing that sir has mentioned in his talk, like writing a research article, writing a research proposal for grants, or writing a PhD thesis or any kind of thesis or dissertation. So today in my talk, I'll discuss about how to write a PhD thesis or any kind of dissertation effectively. So before going into the details, I'd like to give a brief introduction about myself. Completed my BSc in chemistry in 2012. Thereafter, I have joined IISER Kolkata as an integrated PhD student, and I have completed my master's in 2014 in chemical sciences. In my graduate research, I have worked with Professor Raja Shanmugam, and my thesis topic was to develop polymeric-based gels using thionorbornene photoclick chemistry. And the target was to remove toxic dyes from aqueous solutions, and we have been able to remove anionic and cationic dyes from aqueous solutions. And I have recently submitted my thesis. So, okay, so I'd like to summarize my thesis in a nutshell. So first, we have developed telecally. Okay. So we have developed functional polymers. Then under UV light, this has formed gels, and those gels were able to remove dyes from aqueous solutions. And we have also found that all the gels that we have synthesized were quite significantly recyclable up to few cycles. And we have also developed few gels by varying the polymer constituents, and we have found that that by fine-tuning the polymer constituents, the dye removal efficiency can also be escalated. And there is a picture which describes how the gels are efficient in removing dyes from aqueous solutions. So next, before going into the details of the process of thesis writing, let us first understand what is a thesis. So a thesis is basically a monograph which reflects the author's acquired knowledge in a particular field with sufficient empirical evidence, and a thesis is basically written by a PhD. It's solely written by a PhD student. And now a thesis it's a written record of the amount of work, a significant amount of work that is done by a student. And this is also an attempt to communicate your research with a larger audience. Now the next question comes that what is in the thesis? So a thesis basically addresses a problem or a series of problems in a certain field. It also describes what is known in the field and what are the gaps in the literature, or what are the challenges that has not been solved despite several attempts, or what are the challenge, or what are the uh, gaps that has been overlooked for many years, and what a student with best of his ability can do to solve the problem. Now, in a thesis, you should document that how you have solved the problem, what are the results that you have obtained, and a good thesis also outlines the possibility of some future research in that particular direction. So the next question is when to start writing a thesis. So it is best for a student to discuss with the supervisor regarding the expectations, that how many chapters to include in a thesis, or what problem the supervisor wants you to focus on. Then you can carry out in-depth analysis. You can develop your original and creative piece of work, so that you are able to provide some useful knowledge about your new findings. And before you start writing your thesis, it is very important that you present your data or your expertise in scientific conferences and meetings. So in that way, you will develop a presentation skill, and you will know how you can present your results in a clear and meaningful way.
Excuse me, Santini ma'am, I think has lost the connection.
I think so. Yeah, let us wait for a minute and she may rejoin. Huh? Yeah.
We are connecting to Santini ma'am. Please wait for a few seconds. Santini ma'am is back. Ma'am, please continue.
Yeah, I'm sorry for the technical glitch.
Yeah, go ahead. Yeah.
So now let us discuss what are the typical thesis contents. So a thesis first begins obviously with a title, followed by declaration by a student as well as by supervisors, which reports the originality of the work. Then there comes acknowledgement, table of contents. Then there is list of figures and tables. After that, there comes abstract, introduction. After that, there are empirical chapters, which includes the methods and resultant discussion. And after that, there are conclusion and future direction. So I'll discuss each of the sections, how you can write effectively. So first things first, when a reader or a reviewer first sees the title in your thesis, so it must capture the essence of the research if you want to engage the reader's interest. And it should be, the title of the thesis must be chosen very carefully, because it basically condenses half of a decade of your life in one sentence. So you have to remember some do's and don'ts while writing a thesis. The first thing, the title of the thesis must be very focused and precise, where the research premise should be clearly defined. Then it is a good idea to use the related keywords in the thesis title itself. And ideally, a title should reflect the problem that you are concerned in your thesis and also the method that you have used to solve the problem. And you should also remember that the thesis title should not be very long and vague, because usually people are not interested in reading a long title, and a vague title will misguide the readers. Then you should remember that we shouldn't use any kind of abbreviation or acronyms in the title itself, and we should not overclaim or undersell the research topic in the thesis title. And the thesis title should not be a question by itself. And ideally, the thesis title should be written at last, but in some cases, in some universities, the student has to provide the thesis title in the beginning or soon after the beginning, and there is no point of changing the thesis title after a certain time has passed. So that should be checked with the university guideline, and one should be very careful about giving the title. So after title, there comes the front matters of the thesis, which includes the acknowledgements, table of contents, and list of figures. So first, I'll talk about acknowledgement. Now, as we know that thesis is a formal piece of writing, it gives an occasion to thank the people that you are really grateful to. So you can begin with thanking your supervisor first, then you can go down to thank any people, or you can thank all of those that you want, all of those who helped you to reach this journey, be it your collaborators, your friend and family. And you must also include your source of financial interest, because that is very important for a student to survive. So after that, there comes a table of contents, so which basically includes the front matter of the thesis, the main content, as well as the back matters. And this contains the headings and subheadings, which should be properly numbered according to their first appearance and page number. And the table of content must be prepared with utmost care, because this basically enables the readers to find their the desired content. What they want to read, they can easily find out from the table of contents. Then comes the list of figures and tables, where you should consecutively write the numbers of the figures and tables with their page number. And this also helps navigating the readers to go to those pages where they can find their desired results with the graphs. So next, let us discuss about abstract of the thesis. This is perhaps the most difficult part to write in a thesis, because this part summarizes the important elements of the thesis, but in a very highly condensed form. So one must be very careful in writing the abstract. So in the abstract, in the first paragraph, you have to define the problem that you are working in. Then you have to discuss what the literature says about the problem and what are the challenges that needs to be addressed. And you have to mention that why the problem is very significant in recent times. Then you can discuss about the method to solve the problem. If you want to discuss about the some techniques, then you can also discuss that briefly. Thereafter, you have to discuss the results that you have obtained, and you have to summarize significant results, and you can relate it to the problem. You can definitely relate it to literature. Then you have to write the implication of the results. And what happens in thesis while writing thesis abstract is, generally the readers read the abstract and then they decide whether they want to read the whole thesis or not. Or when the thesis is sent for evaluation, then also the examiners read the abstract only to decide whether they want to review the thesis or not. So the abstract must be written with care, and this is also known as the best part of the thesis. So it is best to keep the best for the last. So you are encouraged to write the abstract at the last, after you finish all the main content of your thesis. So next is, after abstract, there comes introduction, which is actually the curtain raiser of your thesis. And this is basically the first chapter that, where you want to attract readers' attraction. So what you have to do, so there are some rules to write the introduction. So first you can begin with some general relevant statement in your introduction. Then you can narrow it down to your area of concern. And then you can explicitly describe the problem. You can also identify the mostly affected population if you want to. Then you have to provide uh, literature review in appropriate context, and you have to point out the overall trends of literature that are published in the topic. And you have to establish your own point of view regarding reviewing literature. And here you have to be very careful. You cannot cite all the reports that are available in literature. There should be good reason to cite the literature. And you have to be very constructively critical. So the thing is, you may want to state the scope of your literature review, and you can also mention why certain literatures are not included in your literature review. So citing a literature must be very important. And okay, so this is the roadmap for writing a good thesis introduction. So you have to be very clear. You don't want to confuse the readers with unnecessarily big words. You have to be very precise, and you have to describe your problem statement very clearly. Then you have to state your hypothesis or your objective very clearly, and you have to be very honest with your claims. You cannot say that your thesis covers the entire field, and you have to explain what you want to do in your thesis. There are also a few related tips that may help you in writing good introduction. That if in your thesis you want to use some acronyms or some abbreviations throughout, so it's better to introduce them in the introduction and define them well. Then you can carefully number the headings and subheadings for the better understanding of the papers. Then if you want to reproduce some artworks that are not that you have not drawn, that are published in other papers, then you must obtain the publisher's permission to transfer you the copyright, and then you can cite them in your literature. Then comes a chapter breakdown. This is actually the main content of your thesis, and this contains the whole hard work that you have done. So you have to discuss with your supervisor regarding to prepare the thesis outline. And actually this section unfolds a sequence of chapters, each with unique results. So you must be very careful, and one should understand that in a thesis, you are trying to tell a whole story. So all the chapters must fit to the narrative, and there should be a natural progression from one chapter to the other chapter. And throughout your thesis, especially in the experimental chapters, there should not be any gap in the flow of your logic. And there should be a link which must be remembered while presenting the results. And if possible, the results that you are going to present must be double checked, and a standard nomenclature should be adopted throughout the experimental chapters. Now I'll discuss what each experimental section should consist. So you should begin your experimental chapter with a brief introduction about the objective. Then you can describe that what sub-problem or what issue this chapter is concerned about within the proper context. And you can also tell that how this chapter fits to the overall story of your thesis. Now, after introduction, you have to discuss the experimental section, where you have to tell the methods that you have adopted based on your literature review. You must also give a detailed account of experimental procedure so that it is all the experiments that you have done and the results are reproduced by others. You have to provide the information in a very user-friendly method. And it's advised that if you maintain a notebook and record every details as you go along, because what happens when most of the time we write the thesis after months and years of finishing our data collection and analysis. So by the time we write our thesis or manuscript, we tend to forget many minute details, which are maybe essential for its reproducibility. So it's a very good habit to keep a lab record or a lab notebook, because that comes very handy while writing the experimental section, and that saves a lot of time. Then you can include the citations of the procedure that you have used in your work. You can also include a brief description of the instruments, and you can enlist the source of reagents that you have procured. Now, after experimental sections, there comes result and discussion, where you have, this section is very important because this adds value to the work that you have done. So you have to clearly present your experimentally obtained results by using self-contained figures and tables to illustrate your points. As well-labeled figures are able to convey more information than plain text. And you should remember that the text and figures should not be complementary. They should be complementary. They should not repeat the same information, as repetition of results doesn't make the thesis look good. And all the results must be presented logically. They should not be presented in the order that they are carried out. They should be presented logically. And though results and discussion can be presented in a different sections, but it is the traditional way to combine results and discussion, because results without discussions do not make much sense. So you can combine these two sections together, and you have to logically interpret and explain your results. You have to emphasize that, emphasize the importance of the results, and you have to link it with your literature to show that how your results link, how your results fill the gap in the literature. And you have to be very concise in doing that. And you also don't want to over interpret the results. And if required, you can use subheadings to help organizing your results into groups so that it becomes easy for the readers to understand. And you can also acknowledge the limitations of your results. Then comes the conclusion of the experimental chapter. This is not the conclusion of thesis. So here you have to signify the important results that you have obtained in this chapter, and you can describe what this chapter or what the results of this chapter contribute to the thesis. And you can also make some recommendations if you want. And you can also add a transition sentence which work as a teaser for the next chapter. And you can also discuss how the next chapter that you are going to tell is related to this chapter. So with that, let us go to the exit strategy, which includes the conclusion and future direction. So in the conclusion, you have to state the most important points of each chapter. Here you don't want to summarize the results that are already the key points that are already you have discussed in previous chapters. Instead, you have to use your own scientific logic to relate those key points, and you have to show how you have progressed through each consecutive chapters. So there is an image. If you look at the image, where the first image, all the building blocks are just placed together, they are not connected. Whereas in the other image, the building blocks are logically connected to make sense. Similarly, in your thesis also, you have to arrange all the key points so that it makes sense. You have to explain the relevance of your work in the conclusion section. And here you don't want to copy the claims from introduction. You have to be very honest and reflective, and you have to describe how much you have been able to achieve in your claims that you have already stated in introduction. Here you can give a critical insight of your work. And this is the conclusion section is not the part where you can bring up new ideas. However, if you want, you can state the future directions, and it's wise to end your conclusion with a positive note. You can say what results can be obtained by doing the trend of research that you have documented. With that, let me discuss about listing of references. It is very important to refer to some references when you are citing the work of others, and you have to mark the references with running numbers and superscripts after the sentence where the topic is addressed. And it's important that you use the first publication for the primary reference, because going to the primary reference, the readers can find more amount of information, and your reference must contain all the information that a reader is able to find the original reference. And in the reference, you do not use et al. Or something like that. You have to mention the full name of the authors, and you have to present the references in a uniform style. Then another important thing is you have to reduce the number of references to some blogs, websites, or tertiary sources like encyclopedia, Wikipedia, etc., because these sources are not archived and they are not peer reviewed. So it is better to refrain from using that. And another important thing is you should not refer to any reference without reading it, because you may find that one paper is appearing in many journals to support a particular claim. But before you cite it in your thesis or in your work, you should go back to that literature. You should validate the point, then you can cite it in your reference. So after that, I want to discuss some pitfalls that should be avoided while writing a thesis. So the first thing, you don't want to include all the work that you have carried out in your graduate research into your thesis, because maybe the objective of some of your work may not match with your thesis objective. As poorly organized or unrelated results do not add up the whole story that you're going to tell in your thesis. Another problem that most of the student faces is time management. So if you start too late or if you tend to procrastinate, then it becomes very difficult to finish the thesis on time. And you should avoid unclear or complex statements, bad quality or inconsistently labeled figures, tables, typos in your thesis. So you must carefully revise the thesis to avoid those mistakes. And another thing is the thesis is your own work. So you should use your own words. Don't copy and paste from other sources. So, because plagiarism is unacceptable in theses. So with that, I'd like to point out some recommendations that should be remembered for writing a good thesis. So as we know that writing a good thesis is challenging. So you can seek help from your supervisor or your seniors who have the experience of writing theses and scientific manuscripts more than you. So, and also you should start early, because the earlier the better. And you can establish a focused writing style. Actually, writing is also an experimental science. You have to understand, or you have to figure out what works best for you. And you can divide your time. You can set a realistic goal for yourself, and you can reward yourself for a little progress. Then you should stick to your outline, and you should be as organized as possible. Then you must start with the most comfortable chapter. Like if you have any previously published paper, then you start with that. Then you can start, then you can go to your experimental chapters. Then you write the conclusion. Then you write the introduction. It is ideal to write introduction after you finish your conclusion. Then the introduction and conclusion will match. And then you write your abstract and title. And you have to, throughout your thesis, you have to state facts. You don't want to tell about any speculation in your thesis. And as sir has already mentioned in his talk, that well illustrated figures and graphs should be there. It should be incorporated in your thesis. And you should remember that you have to write without grammatical and spelling errors to make your thesis look polished. So here's to good thesis writing. Thank you.
Good job, Sayantani. And with that, we are finishing our presentation. Now I'm leaving to organizers.
Thank you, Professor Dr. Shumugam. Thank you, Sayantani ma'am.
Thank you.
Yes, Professor Shamasta, please.
As Professor Shanmugam knows, I'm a little bit of an impatient person. So with your permission, let me say a few things and then we'll go to the question and answer. First of all, I am really not only grateful, I'm pleased with such nice people around me. And as we can see, you see, this is nap time after lunch. But you have given such wonderful presentation. 175 participants are on board right now. So that's one part. The other part, let me share, because I know Professor Shanmugam not for very long. And this is something I'm telling from my heart. I'm glad that so many of us, so many of you could get a taste of him, because I know two individuals who are alike. One is he was my roommate in ISC Bangalore when I was doing my PhD, room A76. Not PhD, my master's. Shugoto Bakchi, he is a scientist at IBM in New Jersey now. And the other person is you, Professor Shanmugam. You combine, no, the point is you combine this combination of a sharp mind and a good heart is rather rare. At least that's I found in my life, I found that's rare. So it is my pleasure, especially to be able to share you and your presence and your the presentation of your scholar to the rest of the community of this FDP. Having said that, we have been trying, and I have been in touch with you a little while during this FDP planning and all that, and gotten your feedback in regarding the abstract or the programs and all. And so far, I feel, and not only I, all the organizers, we feel blessed, because you see this, having a scientific writing skill is like a good necklace. It has different beads. All the beads need to be in place and in the right place. So I try to identify with my humble ability, what could be the important beats and the gems, and then kind of left it to, life, so that schedules could be balanced, so that it could be put in order. So far, it is happening that way. That yesterday we had sessions on research design. Then we had a session on organizing thoughts or mind mapping, concept mapping, so that basically what Sayantani, her one slide could have summarized my entire hour-and-a-half presentation, having in the mind all everything disordered and then the Lego. Today, the first session with Professor Nilanjana Gupta from former Dean of Jadavpur University, she kind of elucidated or illuminated the aesthetics of writing. And basically, that scientific and humanities writing are not fundamentally different. Good writing is good writing. So an inclusive approach. And then we come to this session. And there are a couple of takeaways that I have noted. I'm going to repeat that for my own memory as well as for the benefit of the audience. And then we will go to the question, answer, and interactive session. What you mentioned first was the division. And there were novelty. Division means classification. Basic verse, typically after basic, somebody is almost prompted to say applied. That is our Pavlovian conditioning. Basic science, applied science. However, it is better to think in terms of basic science and relevant science. Because basic science could, under certain circumstances, become relevant. And it is, as scientists, it is imperative, it is our job to look deeply and seek relevance in something that is basic in a nature. Because we associate depth and profoundness with basic. So if we say that we are doing something applied, or there might be a connotation of being superficial, not that deep. But if we use the right nomenclature as relevant, it becomes imperative, it becomes incumbent on us to dig out the relevance of something which is basic. So thank you for introducing that terminology. And I've noted a few things because those are things I also in some vague way have been thinking and I was afraid to discuss. Now that I have your support of the group, the other thing is figures first. Not only figures first, make them first and then organize. Do not think of having everything organized and then trying to get. Then we will keep on. I mean, we'll never be in a position to set. So these are, and then the bone of contention, and you can count me in your team, writing to all these editorial boards about formatting first. Figures first should be followed and formatting first should be banned.
Yes.
It is essentially a very archaic, feudal attitude that somebody is controlling. It is not appropriate. And someday it is going to disappear, I'm pretty sure. Hopefully, I would be alive to write one paper after it disappears.
Sure, sir. I'm also hopeful, sir.
Of course. Then I must say, the presentation aspect with Sayantani, and thank you, Sayantani, for being a part and partner to all this. Some of the lines which actually captured my imagination, I will take permission from you to use those while I talk to others. The line was, no research is finished until it's written up. It is very important. It is very apt and very, very well summarized. So all of us should keep that in mind. There is a colloquial American saying, it's not done until it's done. So it's basically, it is what it's done means it has to be written up. That means the complete organization, it is completed. Next thing was, I do not know whether Sayantani did that intentionally. I would have done it intentionally, is logging out. Because glitches are part and parcel of research. Things never go smoothly. Expecting the unexpected should be a part of the character of somebody, because research is a very something more than mind. You need more of stomach and character, because there is a lot of uncertainty. It is like opening a business. There's a lot of similarity between entrepreneurs and researchers. So we will always face problems which we never thought beforehand. And such, I mean, instruments break down, don't they? They do. And then we have to change course. It is just we got disconnected for a few minutes only, but instruments break down, and then you make the call. If it is something like a high resolution TEM, God knows when it is going to be fixed. So such things. So we have to be prepared for it. The other thing was the title. What was the first line of the title? That the title condenses half a decade of your life in one sentence. So writing such a profound and a potent sentence is no joke. So at least a few weeks one should work on just one sentence. And so that's a very, very, I mean, these are almost like slogans I'm going to put up as charts or share it like that with my scholars and my students and the young faculty members to keep it in front of us, because it should be in the front burner, not in the back burner, but the front of our mind. Then results without discussion does not make sense. Thank you so much. I have always, because initially, I am a few decades ago, and then things were even more rigid, if I may say. And everybody said, okay, results section and discussion section. How can I do a discussion section without referring to the results section? And if I'm referring, how can I refer to a result without repeating it? So if I am allowed to merge the two in a reasonable way, if I have the freedom as a researcher, that I think makes for good writing. And finally, writing is also an experimental science. This is the line. I think this should have been the tagline for this FDP. So thank you very much for providing it. And I really, really appreciate, and there are questions. I'm sure the people would ask several questions, and there are some requests. So I would basically, if it is not, we are going to have a proceedings published after this. So what we are planning is to include the PowerPoints, the slides that you have. So if it could be shared, then it could be circulated among all the attendees.
Surely, I will send it. Yeah,
yeah.
Sure.
So that is something, and then of course this is there. It has been on the YouTube. So I would take your permission that once we do the editing and all that, we would be using it as a learning resource, because it is going fairly well. So thank you so much. I leave it to now to the moderators, and let us take some of the questions. And please invite the people who have questions, ask them to raise hands so that they can interact directly with our session conductors. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Sure, sir. Thank you. Thank you, sir. Now we are directly heading towards the question and answer session. The first question that I can see in the question and answer box asked by Surekha Chattopadhyay. Surekha Chattopadhyay, can you please raise your hand so that we can unmute you? Mr. Kumar?
Yes, Surekha ma'am is allowed. Ma'am, please unmute your mic. Surekha Chattopadhyay ma'am. Surekha Chattopadhyay ma'am, please unmute your mic and please ask your question. Yes, ma'am, please. Ma'am, please unmute your mic so that we can listen your question.
My question was how to write down a proper literature review.
how to write a literature review.
How to write down a proper literature review, sir.
Okay, sure. First and foremost, you have to choose the topic on which you are going to write the review. Right? The literature review also, you have to decide first as we write a proposal or anything. You have to first choose the theme, right? Similarly, you have to choose the topic. Then, in that particular topic, say, as I said, it should be very precise, and the topic should be having a 10 years literature collection. So I am sure all the recent developments are having the review articles. So your literature review should be citing the recent literatures. And also you can have a few, the initial manuscripts on that particular field, you can keep it as a reference. But your literature review should be the recent one, at least the past 5 to 10 years. There you can collect the references. Then there also you should plan the figures. What are the schemes you are going to keep, and what are the figures you can make. Some figures you can get the permission from the original publishers and you can put it in the review. But it is always preferable to make your own figures, keeping the older one as a guideline. And you can make the divisions like introduction, discussion also on how the recent literature developed in that particular problem. Then if there are any contribution from your side, you can also include that in that review article. Then you can also give a future prospects based on your reading and understanding. You can give a focus how this field will be. You can also predict in that literature and finish it. That's how a literature review can be written.
Okay. Okay. Thank you. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir. Very nicely it is described. Now I'm moving towards the next participant. Mr. Kumar, please allow the next one.
Yes, sir. Next, Mahesh Kumar. Mr. Mahesh Kumar, please unmute your mic and please ask your question. Mahesh Kumar.
Sir,
Yes.
good evening to sir and madam, sir. Very good informative sessions.
Thank you.
And thanks for that to entire team, sir. I am from the Karnataka, Mysore. Sir, there is a general question, sir. Sir, I am the commerce guy. Can I opt for the economic any subject? I don't know much about the research, sir. I am learning from entire your team, sir. Just I am asking, sir.
So you would like to choose a commerce as a research field?
Sir, I am the commerce, sir.
Okay.
But can I opt for the economic papers, sir?
This is
cross department, cross combination.
I think interdisciplinary in the research is very welcome, and definitely if there is a scope and if you can make it as an interdisciplinary, I think I should in the research I don't see a problem to choose. Causing the, I think our Sukhendu sir also will agree, being a senior person in this field, interdisciplinaries are always encouraged. I think there are no issues. Right, sir?
Yes, if I may here.
Please, sir.
You see, please don't take it in any Mr. Kumar, Mahesh Kumar, right? That's your name?
Yes.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
What happens is this commerce is very peculiar to India.
Okay, sir.
Nobody in Switzerland says I am in commerce or anywhere. They said accountancy or finance. Commerce is not actually an academic. You will not find a journal of commerce. Maybe there that is about trade or something, but you will find a journal of finance, which is a very high impact one. It is exceedingly difficult to publish there. So what is your, I mean, commerce means what sort of subjects you took. So if you had in your UG and PG some economics as your foundation, then you can always do it. So there is, but always in the sense, in principle, in academically and intellectually, and policies vary. Policies vary from university to university. So there are institutes or centers who actually encourage interdisciplinary ones. There are some universities, for example, one Ashoka University, that's a private university in NCR region. That's a very modern-minded university. And then they are these disciplinary boundaries don't exist that way. So they encourage not only interdisciplinary, but transdisciplinary as well. So if you would like to do, that is perfectly, I mean, and many people have done that across the world, across decades, but you need to select the right university and the right intellectual ambience which supports you. Traditional places might be not the most suitable for you in this regard.
Okay, sir. Thank you, sir. Samajhdar. Thank you so much, sir.
Thank you.
So the next participant is Abhimanyu Bandyopadhyay. Abhimanyu Bandyopadhyay, please unmute yourself. Mr. Kumar, please.
Abhimanyu Bandyopadhyay, please unmute your mic so that we can listen your question. Abhimanyu Bandyopadhyay. Abhimanyu Bandyopadhyay, are you there? Sir, if you
maybe we move on to the next person. Yes. When he comes back, we will take Abhimanyu ji.
Okay, sir.
There are some in the chat box. Please, the people on the chat box. Okay.
Yes, sir. And now we are taking questions from the question answer box first. Then we will go to the chat box.
All right.
Okay. And next is Rakesh Pandey. Mr. Kumar. Yes.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Rakesh Pandey, please.
Yes. Good afternoon, sirs. See, I have question. Generally, while completing research, we collect data from various agencies. So, like, I would like to know, while doing research in law or forensic science, are law enforcement or other government agencies bound to provide data to us? Or what is the method for collecting data from them? Because, see, this could be a challenge while doing research. And this forensic science or law is that sort of subject which we need help from government agencies or law enforcement agencies.
Yeah, this is a very interesting question. And definitely, when you do a research on this particular field, I think you will take permission from the government body and the agencies, and you can also declare that this is for the research purpose. So when you do that, I think the agencies will provide you the data which shall be published. There are some cases which cannot be shared. But in most of the case, when you declare, I think they will definitely share the agencies, and that shall be published. I think Sukhendu sir.
Rakesh, I am with your permission, Samajhdar sir, may I?
Yes. You Shujoy, you are our resident forensic person. Please give your.
Please. Good to know that.
That I will give mine.
Rakesh is also one of our students of MSc in forensic science. And the thing is, if you want some data from the government agencies, you need to take the permission from the concerned ministry, like the Ministry of Home and Hill Affairs in case of Government of West Bengal, and for other state, Ministry of Home Affairs. And if you want to take any data from any bank, government bank in case of forensic science, then you need to take the permission from the GM Vigilance. But they only give you the data which can be published to the public, which is also in their website data. They did not give you any kind of a data which is very confidential or anything else. Okay. So in case of if you want to continue your research in those data, that is a hypothetical scenario. Okay, Rakesh.
Okay,
I
sir.
think it is clear to you.
Yes, sir.
Let me put my observation here. First of all, thank you, Mr. Pandey, for asking a question which has made all of us think. Because this is a non-trivial question. The data, it basically, it is making us think on the nature of data. When we say a word data, all men are born equal, not all data are born equal. So the nature of data, it can be viewed like sensitive or not sensitive. Classified information, not classified information. So there are different types of classified information. For example, certain data or information about Netaji Subhash Chandra Bose became declassified just a few years ago. In the US, there are certain rules that after so many years, all the files of the president will become declassified. Here, I am not aware whether there are very specific rules, but the first thing is to take it with permission. Take it with permission. Either if it is in public domain, yes, then it is there. Still, it is a good idea to ask for it. And if it is not in the public domain, request. It is imperative. You might be thinking that, yes, it goes without saying, but it is very important to you to explicitly mention that you will anonymize the data. For example, you are asking for some data on some criminal activities or whatever, and I am one of those criminals. You are not going to use my name. You would use some arbitrary name. So this is called anonymizing in some way. So these are some of the precautions that if one need to take, even with the public domain. And then for ones which are sensitive, one might have to apply to the right authorities, as Sujay Babu pointed out. So that's the approach. And there is another thing, but that's a bit controversial in the sense that if it has to be done, maybe you can take the RTI route as well, but that's another story. Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir.
Kumar, please allow the next one. Shravani Bera, I can see in the question answer box.
Sarbani Bera, please unmute your mic and please ask your question. Sarbani Bera.
All those who have put in questions, please keep your hands raised so that we know, and we can gradually, one after another, we will let you invite you to ask the question in person. Thank you.
Hello, sir. Am I audible?
Yes.
Very faint. If you
Yes,
speak a little bit closely from with your mic, please.
Just 1 minute. Hello, sir. Am I audible now?
Yes, it is much better.
Yes.
Okay, sir. Sir, I wanted to know that if I'm doing a research and if I fail to include some seminal work in my literature review, and then what will happen? Actually, how to make an effective literature review so that no seminal work on the topic is left out? I mean, is there any foolproof means by which we can go through all the seminal texts that are available on that particular topic? I mean, although this is discipline specific, even then I wanted to ask.
Professor Shanmugam, may I just...
Please.
Sharbani madam, Professor Shanmugam, just few minutes address this. He is going to add to more, but one thing that I would suggest is last 5 to 10 years, say you are in certain field, let us say in biochemistry. So in your field, at least look for all the good review papers for the last 5 to 10 years. Usually, the review papers which have been accepted in good journals will make sure that no major part of a seminal work research is missed. So that is my 2 cents worth.
Okay, sir. Thank you.
Exactly. I very much agree with. I thank Sukhendu sir for mentioning this. Definitely, when you go for a very recent review articles, so there it will be covered. Now, if you want to make a contribution in the literature and if you want to make a review, then you should choose the topic which was not covered in the recent reviews. At the same time, your review should give additional information and informative. So then only your review will be cited and get the information. It should not be a repetition of the already published one, right? So you should choose the topic which is not cited in the literature. At the same time, by referring those reviews, you get to know what are the seminal papers that are cited there and which direction you should go. That you should mention in your review article.
Actually, I think by the literature review, they are referring to the literature review portion of their thesis, not a review article. So basically, the objective is to get these review articles, reading that for the 5 and 10 years, and as suggested by Professor Shanmugam, that add some of your own work as well to point the relevance.
Yes. Yes.
Thank you, sir.
Okay.
The next one in the chat box, Mr. Kumar.
Yes, sir.
Please allow.
Sir, there is one raised hand. Sabari
Yes.
Sarkar.
Okay.
Sabari Sarkar. Okay.
Yes, yes.
Sabari Sarkar, please unmute your mic and please ask the question.
Sorry, sir, by mistake. I'm so sorry, but thank you so much. We are liking all the sessions. Thank you so much.
It's good that you're liking the session. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. So, Ritesh Kumar Dubey. Mr. Kumar.
Yes.
Yes.
Ritesh Kumar Dubey. Please unmute your mic so that we can take your question. Please unmute your mic, Ritesh Kumar Dubey. Ritesh Kumar Dubey, please unmute your mic and please ask the question.
Okay, he has replied that he has no question, so he also has mistakenly raised hand.
Sure. Mr. Kayal, we have barely half an hour left. Okay, maybe we need to change the strategy. You might want to go one by one the chat questions, okay? And let's sir address that. There are some I can see how to check for plagiarism and from Kamalesh Kumar Pandey. Okay, so
yes.
Do that. Let us do that, and then again, if we have some time left in the end, we can come back to this strategy.
Okay, sir. So from the chat box, I'm taking the first question.
Sir, Kamlesh Kumar Pandey. Kamlesh Kumar Pandey, please unmute your mic.
Yes, sir. My voice is coming, sir?
Yes.
Sorry.
Yes, sir. Now my question is general problem, sir. And my question is, what is the basic point? What is the basic point we write in the abstract and conclusions in the thesis and also a research paper, sir?
Yeah, so what you will write in the abstract and conclusion, that I have clearly mentioned in the presentation. So the abstract should be very sharp and straightforward. You should define the what is the background of the problem. Then you should also, in just 2 lines, you should tell about your findings and what is the important finding you are talking about if you are writing a scientific manuscript. And the first line should be the background, then the importance of the findings, then the lead, how your finding is going to imply in the research field. That should be the last line. So more or less, it's about 5 lines in your abstract. That should be the short abstract for a manuscript. Similarly, in the conclusion, you should highlight your findings, and you should always, as Sayantani mentioned in the presentation, you finish it with a positive note, so that after concluding your findings, the reader should take a take-home message as a positive thing. The finding is really very useful, right? So you finish the manuscript, the scientific writing, with a positive note. That should be the important thing. Yeah.
Okay, sir. Thank you, sir.
You're welcome.
Sir, I'm taking one question from the chat box. Shumanto Bhattacharya. He's asking how to check plagiarism without hazards.
So the plagiarism softwares are now available, and it is, if you are affiliated with the institution, the library takes care of these things. You have to make a request. After making the scientific write-up, you shall make a request to the librarian. He or she will do the, using the software, check the document thoroughly and gives the report score. There are scores. If the document doesn't match, then you get the score should be ideally it should be 0, and if there are matching comes, then there is a ratios. And again, the acceptability of plagiarism also these days there in the publishers. So in general, it is desirable that less than 15% of plagiarisms. So 15% is in the sense you cannot change the name of the instrument. A NMR instrument is a NMR, right? You cannot change. TEM, transmission electron microscope, cannot change. So these words will appear in all the manuscripts, right? So these can be allowed. That is called the allowed plagiarisms. The instrumentation, the facts, those things are allowed. So that's why it is desirable that less than 15% of the repetition in the wordings are allowed. Those are the standard ones, like the instrument names, and that's it. I hope I have cleared your doubt.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Thank you, sir.
Yeah.
Another question related to plagiarism in the chat box, sir. How does the plagiarism checker work to specifically identify copied text?
Again, it's
by Jiba Shamsi.
So
I think
Professor
is
Shanmugam,
asking about the technical details.
this is, we cannot divulge this. we should not divulge this. On a public forum, it cannot be divulged.
Truly.
So sir, we just escaped the trap.
Thank you for the question, but as Sugandhu sir said, publicly we cannot divulge the topic. Yes.
Okay, sir. Okay. Yeah. So,
Professor Shanmugam, with your permission, may I just ask one of my own questions?
Please.
Okay. Before I start, sir, I'd like to thank you and Sayantani ma'am for deliberating a lot on writing the abstract, which is very helpful for those of us who are planning to start writing.
Oh, nice. Thank you.
Thank you.
But,
Thank you very much.
Thank you. My question is that while writing the abstract, Professor Shanmugam, you mentioned that you have to note down the findings. So how should we note them down, and how much should we really divulge so that the readers can still have an interest in reading the full paper? So
the abstract, how you are going to write the findings? That's what is the question, right?
Yes, yes, sir.
Okay.
That's sir.
So may I ask you which field are you working on?
Sir, I'm working on English. Actually, I'm writing a paper on pigeons right at the moment. It's about the hybrid lingo.
Hybrid lingo
of a particular place.
Okay. So it was a curiosity question. That's why I asked. So, but it is, you are in field of English. So really, it's really challenging field for all of us, particularly we scientists. We dream about English, particularly writing a good English, and I think you are the expert. Well, the abstract, the findings, in the sense, for example, let me take our own field so that it is easy for me to explain. Let's say I have made a polymer that the polymer is new, and that polymer is made, that polymer which is expected to deliver the cancer drug at the cancer cell, and it does that. That is the theme of the research which I have done, and I am writing the manuscript. So if I have to tell about this finding in the abstract, I will say that the newly designed polymer, which is thoroughly characterized using the standard analytical techniques, and it clearly kills the cancer cells, and it is also biocompatible and working effectively. So in this line I will make. So these two lines completely tells that my design about the polymer, and those are all nicely characterized, and it also, the scope of the polymer is to kill the cancer cell. So that also done. So within 2 lines, I finished my overall design of the manuscript. So did I clarify your question?
Yes, sir. Thank you so much, sir.
Yeah. So that's how the abstract should be. So, but in the manuscript, I will be discussing in detail about how the molecule is designed, how it was synthesized, how it was characterized, then how it, the other properties, then about the biology, the whole thing I will be discussing in the manuscript. But in the 2 lines, I mentioned those things. It is newly designed and thoroughly characterized, and it also kills effectively the biology, cancer cells. In that 2 lines, I finished my finding. So this should be the short sentence that should reflect in the abstract.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for answering my question.
Thank you, sir. Thomas sir, as we are left with no new questions in the chat box, so
there is some. I think there is one about, it is not a new question, but Lina Jadhav, kindly give guidelines for writing research proposal. I think that was fairly elaborately addressed, but maybe Professor Shanmugan, you can give an abstract of it in response.
Sure. So proposal writing is very, very important. And as I mentioned in my presentation, when you start your career freshly, or even after establishing the career, getting the money is very important to sustain your research. So writing a good proposal is very, very important. Your idea and proposal, the proposed research scheme should be relevant science. There should be a relevance in the science, so that the application is well appreciated while reviewing, and even the funding body will appreciate. So choose the right relevant problem, then write the objectives very clearly, 3 objectives. Then you do the research background, literature background, like national level and international level, how the relevant problem is standing. At present, who are all working at the national level and the international level. Then, as I mentioned in the presentation, while mentioning the national level, the funding agency may choose a reviewer to review the proposal from there. So you cite those who are currently working in those areas, you please include in the reference list, so that your proposal will be reviewed by the current researchers. This will help your proposal, because those number of people who work on the relevant problem will support your idea, right? So this is a very important problem. It should be funded like that. So choose the right problem, write the clear objectives, then background of national level and international level of the proposed problem. Then a timeline, you give the timeline very nicely. How you are going to execute the proposed idea, what is the outcome of the proposed idea in 3 months, 6 months, 12 months, and 2 years. Like that, you give the timeline of the proposed idea, and for each timeline, each stage, you give the checklist. At this stage, this is what the response if the project goes nicely. So what are the outcomes? So the checklist should be given so that the reviewers and the funding agency knows that the PI knows about the problem, and also the PI is thorough in the subject. That also gives the idea when you give the checklist. Then you also mention the deliverable at the as an outcome of this proposed scheme. What are the deliverables? What you will deliver at the end of this project after the successful completion? So this also you mentioned. Then budgeting. Budgeting is very, very important. You have to envision the expected cost for the chemicals, and if there is an important instrument which is not available in the institute or the nearby, then you can propose that instrument. So that this is very, you have to give the justification. When you ask for an instrument, you have to give a justification that this instrument is not in the nearby, or not in the institute, or the nearby also institute also, so that I am procuring it, which is very mandatory to execute the proposal. So you give the justification to the equipment request, then you give the optimum budget, then there are more than 90% of chances to get it funded, the proposed idea.
Thank you.
Okay, sir. Thank you, sir.
Mr. Kayal, there is Abhimanyu there? He posted a question at 4:11.
Yes, sir. I think Abhimanyu is having some problem with his network connectivity.
Okay, so you read that question.
Directly from the
Yeah,
chat box.
because that question is fairly somewhat specific, and
yes, sir.
So,
Professor Shanmugam, I'm reading out the questions.
Yeah, please.
Yes, he's saying that he's a final year PhD student in bioinformatics at MAKAUT. Now he has submitted his pre-thesis and have written it in a similar format described in the talk as a thesis, so that he can essentially expand on it while writing it in its final form. Now he's saying, I prepared to include that the discussion and conclusion letter for this purpose based on further feedback in the research. Please provide some suggestions on this approach and how this can affect the length of the final thesis as well. Since every length would, of course, differ from thesis. Yes, sir. Am I audible, sir?
Yeah, your last two sentences were not audible. Could you please repeat?
Okay. So he's asking to provide some suggestions on this approach and how this can affect the length of the final thesis as well. Since every research is distinct in its own way, the length would, of course, differ from thesis to thesis. So how should we conclude on an acceptable length of a thesis, as in the number of pages or words? So it is something, I think, about the length of the thesis.
I think, yeah, I got it. So he's worried about the length or the how to conclude the thesis. See, as Sayantani very nicely mentioned, the thesis is it's your own baby, and the research outcome and the thesis writing. Of course, we have to follow the standard protocol. Each institute is giving the guideline how to follow, how to format, how to place it. But the length and how the organization is your own, you and your supervisor only decides how long it should be. At the same time, the results should not be overly displayed or something, but you should cover the important essence of your research, and there is no limit of thesis can be even 100 pages, it shall be even 250 pages, doesn't matter, but it should cover your research area, and you and the guide only should decide which should go to the thesis. There are some annexures, as Sayantani nicely mentioned. We also encourage our students, the flow should be uniform. The rest of the results can go as an annexure 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, like that. So from chapter 2 to chapter 6, if you are discussing your result, there should be a link to chapter 2 to 6, and the conclusion should have a complete thorough conclusion. When the reader and when the student again refers to your thesis, he or she should get the message. So, okay, this is the problem defined in the introduction. It started in chapter 2 and finished nicely in the 6 with a story. And the message will be clear. The rest of the results, the serendipity results, there are some side projects. Those shall go as annexures, 1, 2, 3. You must have received more publication in those annexures, but that is okay. It shall go as your, always it is your work only. Nobody will claim it is others. So it is your work only, but it shall go as annexures. The main thing, you should not worry about the pages. You should finish the story. That's how I would say.
Professor Shanmugan, on a lighter note,
yes, sir.
What I got out of it, or what would be my suggestion, it is n into 10 to the power 2 pages. N is going to be decided between you and your supervisor.
Yes, sir.
Not n into 10 to the power 1 or n into 10 to the power 3. Is my understanding correct?
Exactly, sir. Very well said. Very nicely mathematical expression you have given.
There is one question, I think, from Madhumita Das Sarkar. Say something about the checklist. Did you? There was some checklist mentioned.
Checklist is a guideline, I would say. Each institute is having a guideline. Okay, so that you have to check whether if it is a manuscript or scientific writing, which is a manuscript, then the publishers are having a checklist. Before you submit, you check these things are in the right form, right format. That is a checklist. For the thesis, again, every institute is having a guideline. You should have a declaration, approval from the PI and signature pages. All these things are the checklist. Other than that, I don't see any other checklist.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, Professor Dr. Shanmugam. Thank you, Sayantani ma'am. That was a very informative and interactive session. And I'm sure that participants, including all of us in the panel, we learned a lot.
I'm going to interrupt you for a second.
Yes, sir.
This is, this is so far, I have never seen so many requests for sharing the PowerPoint. So that is there. We would be publishing a digital proceedings of this FDP, and the presentation, instead of written paper, the PowerPoint presentations will be included and will be shared with all the registered participants. Okay, so on behalf of I think we have the permission of the presenters and the session conductors for that.
Yeah. I will send you the PowerPoint slide to the email, sir.
Yes, today. Thank you. Yes, sorry for interrupting, Shashwato. Please go ahead.
No, sir. Thank you. So now I would like to call upon my colleague, Mr. Shushanto Koyal, the joint coordinator for this FDP session, to deliver the vote of thanks.
Thank you, Shashwato. Before I say the vote of thanks, I would like Dr. Shamasda said to conclude or to sum up the session with his own style. Sir, please.
Well, anyway, it has to be concluded, as Professor Shanmugam and his team indicated, on a positive note. So,
sure, sir.
At least I'm listening. Whether I'm able to speak or not, that's a separate story, but I'm listening. Anyway, jokes apart, this has touched upon all the important aspects. It has touched upon all the important aspects. It has highlighted the logical flow. That is very important, rather than the volume of information. Often we get confused that, okay, this, I have done this, I have done that. So there are work which falls in the, again, we can use the necklace metaphor, that the main necklace and your appendices are here and there, different things dangling from this. But the main necklace, or the main superstructure or matrix has to be cogent and coherent, and it should tell a story with no extra word or no fewer words. So this is very important. That shows the economy of thinking and the logical aspect of thinking, which basically being a very well-toned, it should be muscle. So that intellectually, that would create the relevance. And always, so what happens is if there is extra included in the main body, it actually dilutes the relevance. It makes the relevance blunt. That becomes a little bit, the reader has to find out, has to exert. So please keep that in mind, that the logical flow, that this is something that I would like to remind myself as well, that what is the logical flow of the story, how the different gems are connected. And the additional ones, sir has not asked you to discard. You store it in your own vault. It is yours, but not part of that particular necklace. So that is important. And also something Sayantani madam indicated in a passing remark, that order your thesis in a logical order, not in the chronological order. Because you might do something in the very first month, which might be relevant in the 5th chapter of your thesis. Just because it was done in the first month, it doesn't mean it should be put in the 2nd chapter or the 1st chapter. So this logical order being different from chronological order, first deciding on the order and then putting it in place and keeping the extra, not discarding the extra, but keeping the extra in a different box. So that you check it in, it is not your carry-on luggage. Your thesis should be something that when you travel by flight, it should be the carry-on luggage. So that is my summary of the session. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. So here we reached to discuss on writing. We have just completed 4 very interesting and very important sessions. And now I would like to convey my sincerest gratitude and heartful thanks to Professor Raja Shanmugam sir and Sayantani Bhattacharya ma'am for spending their valuable time and enriching our audience. It was really a beautiful and beneficial, informative session as well for all of us. Thank you, sir. Thank you, ma'am. And now I would like to thank all the participants for their participation and patient listening. Thanks to all the panelists and technical moderators. And with that note, I would like to announce the closing of today's session of session 2, day 2. Thank you all. Thank you, sir.
Thank you so much, Sukhiran sir. It is my pleasure and it is an honor for me to be in the great platform. Thank you all, and thank you, organizers.
Thank you.
Pleasure.
Thank you, sir. So, Mr. Kumar.
Yes, sir.
So we are at the end.
We will be back tomorrow at 10:30 a.m. So
yes,
the link will be given to all the participants.
Okay. Okay. Okay, Mr.
Thank you.
So till